It's an understatement to say that we live in the safest era in human history. Most of us aren't being hunted, and most of us aren't facing immediate physical danger compared to antiquity. And yet anxiety is more prevalent than ever, not because we're weak and not because we're broken, but because our relationship to something very ancient has changed. Anxiety is not new. It's an anticipatory mechanism. The problem has never been that anxiety exists. The problem is that we are no longer able to allow it to complete. The other day, my cat Ivor got into a fight, and you'll probably say with a name like Ivor, it kind of comes with the territory. But naming him Mr. Cuddles wouldn't change this very clear fact. After he come in with cuts and bruises, scratches, looking at right state, we as anxious cat owners wanted to keep him in, protect him and shelter him from that immediate danger. But his instincts had different ideas. He come in, shook it off, had some food, had some fuss, had a little sleep, and then he was ready to go out there and relive it again. In fact, going against these instincts and trying to keep him in was causing him more distress than letting him go back outside again. Because animals tend to relieve stress and threat via the body, whereas humans tend to relive it through our imagination. So after he patches himself back up again, processes it pretty quickly, he's ready to go back outside again. No identity crisis, no narrative spiral, no identification with his anxiety. And that's what makes humans and animals fundamentally different. One is pure instinct, and one is instinct plus imagination. For us humans, we tend to ruminate and think about the possibilities and probabilities when it comes to anxiety, whereas animals tend to respond purely on the probability. And we know once we ruminate and we fester with these thoughts and these ideas, this is how imagination then turns into physiology when our body then starts to adapt to this perceived threat. The nervous system is primed as if there is real danger. This is where thinkers like Rudolf Steiner become quite interesting. He mentioned that in the modern consciousness, thinking and imagination are overdeveloped. And when they're overdeveloped and not grounded, it causes this inner unrest. And that imagination must always be embodied, otherwise it will literally get away from us. Chronic anxiety isn't constant danger, it's repeated activation. The imagination has the ability to elevate us, but an undisciplined and ungrounded imagination always will inflate threat. The ancient Greeks used the word panic, attributed to the god Pan, the wild god, to describe intense fear and uncontrollable terror. For then, the wilderness wasn't only in his mind, it was external as well. Whereas in the safe modern world, most of the wilderness exists within our own mind. We don't necessarily hear the terror and the calls of the wild. We hear that in our imagination, and again, the body responds. A fundamental problem is that we have, in modernity, intellectualized a problem that was always designed to move. And that's why the somatic traditions always existed. Breath work, movement, cold exposure. Yoga wasn't just a thing that was a lifestyle flex. Then you have more of the modern therapeutic practices like bioenergetics or the work of Peter Levine with his trauma-based work. But even primitive cultures had a way of moving, shaking, and dancing. And I'm not saying that medication isn't useful in severe psychological cases, but when that's the default pattern of intervention, seeing a therapist, going to CBT, and then perhaps medication, we're trying to find a way to turn off the alarm as opposed to understanding why the alarm is going off in the first place. People will come at this from different positions. Some people are very stable in their physicality, and for them, the cognitive therapy is useful, sharpening and realigning their thinking. But for other people, they experience bodily dysfunction, tight holding patterns, unrest, sedentary lifestyle, dysregulation, and for them, starting with the body is really useful. As much as I despise the term self-improvement, most of the self-improvement is about getting physical first of all. Not because it's one of the most easy and cost-effective things to do, but it's about regulation of energy. And for those people that are already active, perhaps the CBT and the linkage between thinking and mind becomes a useful intervention, but we must meet ourselves at the point in which we're experiencing it. For some people, it is regulating the body first. For others, it may start with the mind. But the cookie-cutter response in modernity to over-pathologize, over-medicalize, and over-identify with it becomes our biggest downfall. You've probably heard someone saying a statement, my anxiety, using it in a possessive noun, as if they're almost ironically fighting for that title to describe their anxiety as different from yours. If it's an anticipatory intelligence and mechanism, then we all have it to some regard. It's one of those things of a collective experience but an individual solution. What becomes fitting with a dominant culture is that we're able to be fluid about most things, but we need to be more fluid about anxiety. Children are aware of the language around anxiety probably before they're taught how to discharge and process. We need the body to be able to metabolize this stress and this anxiety. We're able to metabolize it in the body when the mind is not able to do so. So it's important that the patterns are given to children early enough before the language is. Otherwise, it gives opportunity for this self-identifying with it without truly understanding what it is. Because anxiety is not going anywhere. And it's not that we don't need it. It is a gift in a way. It enables forethought, future planning, risk avoidance, so many other things that are important. But as Steiner was alluding to, ungrounded, unkept, unmanaged imagination feeds into this chronic cycle of anticipation gone completely wrong. It's no secret that modern life amplifies even further from Steiner's generation this imaginative process. Constant information, infinite information, blue ticks, constant communication, endless potential outcomes. And we're already pretty competent using our imagination to picture disaster. We don't need any more input. An ungrounded imagination becomes a theatre of fear. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety or over-identify with it. It's to metabolize it. It can be energy. It can be information. And it can be inspiration when we learn to ground the imagination back into the body.